Welcome back, learner, to another deep dive. Today, we are dismantling a phrase I can almost guarantee you've used, probably recently, honestly.
Oh, yeah, we all use it constantly.
Right. It's that classic mental shield, mind your business.
Hmm.
It is, our go-to cultural reflex when we just feel completely overwhelmed by everything.
Which is totally fair. I mean, we're bombarded with so much stimuli every single day.
Exactly. So you just think, okay, you stay over there in your lane, I'll stay over here in mine, and the system will run smoothly. We basically treat our lives like we're these completely isolated operating systems.
Yeah, drawing that hard perimeter around our personal lives feels like, honestly, the only way to maintain our sanity sometimes.
It does.
We create this cognitive boundary and convince ourselves that whatever happens inside our own four walls or even just inside our own heads is completely contained. Like it's isolated code that just doesn't communicate with the wider network.
But what if that boundary is a complete structural illusion? Like, what if the very concept of your business versus my business
Hmm.
is just fundamentally at odds with how human architecture actually functions?
That is the big question.
Right. Because today, our source material is this short but incredibly dense excerpt. It's titled The Wisdom of Collective Interconnection. And the mission for this deep dive is to explore the text's central, pretty radical claim, which is that true independence just does not exist.
It's a total myth.
Yeah, so we're going to unpack the mechanics of how our most unseen private actions actually physically alter the wider environment. And we're going to pressure test the blueprint this source proposes for surviving in a world where you literally cannot opt out of the network.
And, it's worth stating right up front that a phrase like collective interconnection can definitely trigger some immediate skepticism.
Oh, for sure. It sounds a bit woo-woo.
Exactly. It sounds like something you'd hear at a weekend yoga retreat.
Right.
Bit untethered from the daily reality of like commuting, paying bills, and managing office politics.
Right, the real world.
But the value of this specific text is that it actually does not treat connection as some mystical aura. It treats it as a mechanical law. It frames human interaction kind of the way a physicist might frame thermodynamics.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah.
So let's get right into those mechanics. To understand why mind your business is essentially a myth, we have to look at how this source defines our baseline reality.
Mm-hmm.
The text actually uses a really specific phrase. It calls us interconnected expressions of the same life. Now, usually we visualize connection like, say, a tapestry, like I'm one single thread, and I can change my color without altering the overall picture, or, like a bunch of separate computers on a network.
Right, the computer analogy is how most of us view it.
Yeah, like I can send you a file, you can send me an email,
Yeah.
but we are distinct machines. But this text seems to be arguing something much deeper than that.
It is. It's arguing that we're not separate machines at all.
Right. We're more like individual instances of software running on a single, massive shared code base.
Yes. That is a much more accurate framework for what the author is trying to get across here. Because, I mean, if you're just separate computers passing messages, you can always unplug your router.
You can just go off the grid.
Exactly. You can go offline and truly mind your own business. But if we are interconnected expressions of the same underlying operating system, then there is no offline.
Wow.
The text asserts that the web of life is singular. And because of that structural reality, it concludes that every single thought, every word, and every action is essentially an input into the shared system.
Every single thought. I mean, that is a massive volume of inputs. And it implies a total zero tolerance policy for isolation.
The source really leaves no gray area here. It literally states that what happens to one part of the whole inevitably affects the other parts.
Inevitably.
Right. That adverb inevitably is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It implies this non-negotiable law of cause and effect. It's not conditional on your intent at all.
So I don't have to purposefully try to influence the network.
Not at all. Just by running a process in your local environment, just living your life, you are altering the global state of the entire system.
Okay, I am going to push back on that on behalf of the learner listening right now, because there is a specific claim in this excerpt that honestly fundamentally breaks our conventional understanding of cause and effect.
Okay, let's hear it.
The text claims even actions done in secrecy carry consequences.
Yeah.
Let's test that. Let's say I am sitting entirely alone in an empty room. The blinds are drawn. No one knows I'm there.
Total isolation.
Total isolation. I'm sitting in the dark, and I am harboring this intense, burning anger about a situation at work. I don't say a single word. I don't punch a wall. I just sit there being angry.
Right.
How mechanically does a completely isolated internal emotional state ripple out to affect this so-called web of life?
It's a great question, and it feels like a paradox until you realize that an internal state does not remain internal forever. The source actually gives a very clear sequence for this. It argues that secret actions ripple outward sequentially. It goes from the individual into families, then communities, then nations, and ultimately the world.
But how?
Well, to understand how your anger in that dark room achieves this, we have to look at the physiology and sociology of human interaction.
So walk me through that. I'm in the dark room. I'm furious.
Mhm.
What exactly happens next?
Well, eventually you have to open a door and leave the room.
Fair enough.
Right. And when you sit in the dark, brewing in that anger, you are physically altering your autonomic nervous system. Your cortisol levels spike, your heart rate variability drops, your breathing becomes way shallower.
So I'm physically changing.
Exactly. You think your anger is a secret just because you haven't verbalized it, but you fundamentally change your physical baseline. So then you walk into your kitchen where your family is having breakfast.
And I assume I don't even have to yell at them for the ripple to start.
You don't have to say a single word. Humans are incredibly highly tuned to detect microexpressions. We pick up on subtle shifts in posture, minute changes in vocal tone. It's an ancient survival mechanism.
So they just feel it.
Yeah. When you walk into the kitchen carrying that elevated allostatic load, your family's mirror neurons detect the threat immediately.
Wow.
The text specifically notes that a person's anger can spread tension. Mechanically, your suppressed state induces a mirrored stress response in your family members.
So their blood pressure goes up.
Yes, their blood pressure rises slightly, their peripheral vision might narrow. You have literally just infected their local system with your underlying code.
Which means they carry my hidden anger out the front door.
Exactly, the progression the text maps out.
Yeah.
Your kids absorb that baseline tension, right? They get on the school bus, and their elevated stress makes them snap at a classmate.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, that classmate goes home frustrated and acts out. Meanwhile, your spouse goes to work and, operating from a place of subtle defensive tension, sends a slightly aggressive email to a client.
Which derails a major project.
Exactly. And then the community tension feeds into the national mood, and the sequence just continues. Your secret anger in the darkroom was never isolated. It was literally the first domino in a behavioral contagion model.
That is genuinely terrifying when you realize how porous we actually are. But I assume this contagion model works in the other direction as well. Like, the text isn't entirely pessimistic, is it?
No, not at all. It follows the exact same mechanical pathway for positive inputs, too. The source states that one act of kindness can inspire healing and hope.
Okay, that's a relief.
Right. So if you sit in that dark room and instead of brewing in anger, you cultivate a moment of genuine self-compassion, or you privately donate to a cause without telling anyone, that secret action lowers your internal stress metrics.
So I walk into the kitchen emitting a completely different physiological signal.
Exactly. You act as a stabilizing node. You calm the nervous systems of your family, who then carry that expanded capacity for patience out into the community.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the text distills this entire dynamic into a really stark summary. It says, we rise together and we also suffer together.
We rise together and we also suffer together. I mean, that forces a massive paradigm shift. But I have to say, internalizing that reality introduces an entirely new, honestly incredibly stressful problem.
Oh, which is what?
Well, if my baseline well-being is literally inextricably tied to your hidden emotional states and private actions, like if we truly suffer together, then my immediate biological imperative is to make sure you behave correctly.
I see.
Right, because if we share a code base, and I know you are prone to writing malware that is going to crash my system, I'm not going to just sit back and watch.
You're going to intervene.
Exactly. I'm going to revoke your administrative privileges.
Yeah.
If everything you do affects me, this text sounds like the ultimate justification to become a tyrannical micromanager of everyone in my life.
It really does sound like that.
The anxiety of being interconnected makes me want to control the entire network.
And that is the exact trap the author anticipates. It's basically the logical fallacy of discovering systems theory.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, once you realize how much a faulty node threatens the entire network, the primal human reflex is interference. You want to walk into someone else's dark room and force them to stop being angry so your kids don't have a bad day at school.
Naturally. It's self-preservation.
But the source provides an explicit hard stop against this reflex. It warns, and this is a direct quote, However, this understanding should not lead to interference, control, or judgment.
I'm really struggling to reconcile that. Because if I see a voltage spike coming down the grid from your house, and I know it's going to fry my appliances, why is the source forbidding me from marching over there and flipping your breaker?
Because it doesn't work.
Why is interference bad if it actually protects the shared system?
Because forceful interference relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of how a decentralized network actually operates. When you try to control another person, you're acting as if you have hierarchical superiority over them.
Oh, like I'm the main server and they're just a terminal.
Exactly. But the text has already established we are interconnected expressions of the same life.
Mm,
We are peers.
right.
So if you forcefully try to rewrite someone else's code, if you try to dictate their emotional processing, you don't actually solve the underlying bug. You just introduce a massive new variable, which is resistance.
So the act of controlling creates friction.
Friction, which creates heat, which burns out the system even faster. Think about it mechanically. When you judge someone or try to micromanage their behavior, you just put their nervous system on the defensive.
Right, I'm spiking their cortisol even more.
Exactly. You elevate their stress hormones further. By trying to forcefully suppress their ripple, you actually amplify it and reflect it back into the web with added velocity.
Wow.
The text suggests that control doesn't insulate you from the problem. It ensures you become entangled in a feedback loop of escalating conflict.
Okay, so if apathy, just minding my business, is a biological impossibility, and control managing your business is a trap that burns down the network, we're backed into a corner here.
We need a third option.
Yeah. How does this text suggest we actually handle the inevitable voltage spikes that come our way?
The source introduces this third option and calls it the path of wisdom. It posits this as the literally only sustainable way to interact with the web of life.
Okay, let's stress test this wisdom.
Hmm.
Let's say the tension from a coworker or a family member is rolling toward me. I'm receiving the angry ping from their node. How does the source define the wise response?
It provides a highly specific operational definition. It says wisdom means having the capacity to support, uplift, and guide one another.
Okay.
And notice the active nature of those verbs. They're fundamentally different from ignoring the person, and they're fundamentally different from dominating the person.
Right, they require engagement without ownership. But what are the actual tools here? Because support and uplift can sound a bit like, generic platitudes if we don't ground them in the mechanics we've been talking about.
I agree, and the source actually gives us the exact tools required to execute this. It says we need love, patience, and understanding.
Again, very Sunday school words.
Right, but we need to strip away those Sunday school connotations and view them as mechanical functions in a complex system. Let's look at patience, for example.
Yes, let's unpack patience. How is patience a mechanical tool?
Well, in a highly volatile, interconnected grid, patience acts as a surge protector.
Oh, like that.
When someone directs their dysregulated energy at you, like they snap at you in a meeting, or they cut you off in traffic, they are passing the contagion.
Passing the voltage spike.
Exactly. If you react with immediate anger, you are acting as a simple conductor. You're just passing the high voltage straight down the line to the next person.
Right.
But patience is the act of absorbing the shockwave without reflecting it. You allow the spike to hit your node, and you choose to dissipate the energy rather than transmit it.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. Patience isn't just sitting there passively taking abuse. It's an active structural buffer preventing a cascade failure in the network.
Precisely.
But wait, if I just act as a shock absorber indefinitely, don't I eventually blow a fuse? I mean, a surge protector can only take so many hits before it literally melts.
Which is exactly why the source pairs patience with understanding and guidance. You don't just absorb the shock, you trace the wire back to see why the system is short-circuiting in the first place.
Ah, well.
Understanding means recognizing that the other person's anger is just an expression of the same underlying life that you share, currently stuck in a dysregulated state. You don't judge the machine for throwing an error code, you troubleshoot the error.
Okay, so if my coworker is losing their mind over a minor scheduling issue, instead of yelling at them to calm down, which is control, or ignoring them while they disrupt the team, which is the illusion of independence, I use patience to absorb the initial outburst.
Right.
Then I use understanding to recognize they're probably projecting anxiety about something else entirely, maybe a fear of job security or, chaos at home.
Exactly. And once you establish that baseline, you apply the final tool, which is guiding. You help them co-regulate.
How do you do that?
You ask the right question, you offer a stabilizing presence, and you basically guide them back to a grounded state. You fix the bug together.
You fix the bug together.
Yeah. And when you apply the specific formula, the text makes a very bold promise about the outcome. It states that wisdom teaches us how to respond to problems without creating more conflict.
Because you aren't adding resistance to the system. You're just grounding the erratic energy.
Exactly. And by grounding it, the text argues that challenges are suddenly handled with peace, compassion, and clarity. The local environment of the network stabilizes.
That's incredible.
And the ultimate goal of adopting this operating procedure, according to the final line of the excerpt, is to propel humanity toward greater harmony and collective growth.
Collective growth. I mean, that really is the only logical conclusion.
Yeah.
If we are truly interconnected expressions of the same life, the concept of individual growth is essentially meaningless.
It really is.
Like a single leaf on a tree cannot thrive if the root system is rotting. You can't have one optimized node in a network that is fundamentally failing.
No, you can't. The text forces us to realize that upgrading your own system is completely useless unless you are also patching the network around you.
Right.
The wisdom the source speaks of isn't some moral luxury. It is the required functional mechanism for humanity to evolve without destroying itself.
Well, we have covered a massive amount of conceptual ground today, learner. We started by tearing down the deeply ingrained myth of mind your business.
We really did.
We mapped out how human beings are not isolated entities, but highly porous nodes in a shared biological and sociological network. We explored the really startling mechanics of behavioral contagion, how even our most private, concealed emotions alter our physiology, hijack the mirror neurons of the people around us, and send shockwaves through our families, our communities, and the world.
That's a lot to take in.
It is. We also confronted the paradox of control. We saw how the terrifying realization of our shared vulnerability can tempt us into micromanaging others, and why that forceful interference only creates more friction, ultimately degrading the very system we're trying to protect. And finally, we decoded the source's alternative, wisdom. We learned how to reframe patience not as a passive virtue, but as an active surge protector, a way to absorb the network's volatility, understand the underlying error codes in others, and guide the collective back to stability. It completely rewrites the rules of engagement for every interaction we have.
It truly does. It demands a relentless level of self-awareness. It strips away the excuse that what happens in your head is yours alone.
Yeah. And if we take the central premise of this text seriously, it leaves us with an incredibly urgent, immediate reality to face.
What's that?
Well, if it is a structural fact that every thought and action inevitably ripples outward, altering the baseline state of your family, your community, and the entire globe, what kind of ripple is the very next private thought you have going to descend out into your web of life?
Wow. Something for all of us to really think about. Thanks for joining us on this Deep Dive, learner. We will catch you next time.